The town of Milchester looked like something out of a greeting card. Snow had fallen overnight, dusting the rooftops like powdered sugar on a Victoria sponge, softening the sharp edges of the winter wind. But inside the newly renovated Harrington Arcati, town's pride and joy of a shopping center, the atmosphere was electric. Strings of warm golden fairy lights blinked in perfect rhythm. Garlands were wrapped around faux marble columns, and artificial snowflakes dangled from the high ceiling, spinning gently in the climate-controlled air. It was the 22nd of December, and the Christmas spirit was being applied with a trowel. Right at the heart of the mall, in the central atrium, they had built a winter wonderland. A little toy train chugged endlessly around a miniature village made of cotton wool, winding between tiny lampposts and little papier-mâché carol singers. Shoppers bustled past, weighed down by glossy carrier bags and that very specific low-level anxiety that only last-minute gift hunting can create. Walking calmly through this chaos was Miss Jane Marple. She was wrapped snugly in a muted grey wool coat, topped with a sensible felt hat. She moved at her own gentle pace, completely unbothered by the mad rush surrounding her. She had come to Milchester to visit her niece, Lucy Westmott, who had recently moved nearby. Lucy had insisted that her Aunt Jane simply had to come and witness modern consumerism in all its spectacular glory. Miss Marple had agreed politely, though privately she remained mildly suspicious of the whole affair. They strolled past the perfume counter of a large department store, inhaling a confusing mixture of sense oranges, synthetic pine, and freshly polished floors. Miss Marple's pale blue eyes wandered. She wasn't looking at the sparkling decorations or the hurried shoppers. She was watching gestures, glances, fragments of conversations caught in passing, and that was precisely how she noticed the first thing that was amiss. Near the escalators, there was a cafe. It was one of those sleek, modern places with uncomfortable minimalist chairs and terribly overpriced cappuccino. A woman in a pale red coat was sitting there, entirely alone at a corner table. Her hands were clutching a paper takeaway cup tightly, but she wasn't drinking from it. Her eyes flitted across the atrium way too quickly. It wasn't boredom. It was anticipation. Or perhaps Miss Marple thought it was fear. Miss Marple turned slightly, careful not to make her interest obvious. The woman was elegant, in a quiet sort of way, with tastefully done hair, but she held herself with the nervous stiffness of someone who desperately hoped nobody would notice them. She glanced at her watch. Then, 30 seconds later, she glanced at it again. She is waiting for someone, Miss Marple murmured quietly. Lucy, who was standing beside her, and entirely focused on a window display of ornamental scarves, barely heard. Who is? No one important, I'm sure, Miss Marple said absently. Tell me, there, who is that woman over there, speaking to the manager of the toy shop? Lucy followed her gaze. Oh, that's Mrs. Keene. Judith Keene. She married into the Keene fortune. You know, the family who owns half of Milchester. That's her shop, Wonderworld Toys. She's a lovely woman, throws a big charity gala every spring. And the man beside her? Miss Marple asked. A new hire, I think, Lucy said. Darryl, I believe his name is a bit awkward, but harmless enough." Miss Marple smiled faintly. Harmlessness, my dear, is terribly hard to measure at a glance. Just then, a painfully jolly voice crackled over the mall's speaker system. "Attention, dear shoppers! The giant Christmas treasure raffle draw will take place in exactly 15 minutes on the atrium stage. Don't forget to drop your ticket stub into the golden box. Before then," Miss Marple's attention lingered on Mrs. Keene. The toy shop owner was now standing very rigidly as a tall gentleman in a smart navy cashmere coat approached her. His arrival had clearly startled her. Even from a distance, Miss Marple could see her smile was forced and her posture was defensive. "How very odd," Miss Marple said, more to herself than to Lucy. "They look like two people who haven't spoken in years and didn't part well when they last did." Lucy tugged at her aunt's sleeve. "Come on, Aunt Jane. You promised we'd try those apple cinnamon scones before they run out." Miss Marple nodded, allowing herself to be led towards the cafe. But as they passed the woman in the red coat, something happened. The woman stood up suddenly. Her chair scraped loudly against the tiled floor. In air, as her hand knocked the paper cup, it tipped sideways, and dark coffee bloomed like a stain across the pristine white tablecloth. The woman didn't even stop to help clean it up. She just walked swiftly away, disappearing into the crowd. Barely a minute later, a man carrying a worn brown leather satchel hurried over to that exact same table. It was now empty, save for the spill. He looked around with anxious, searching eyes. He paused, reached inside his own coat for a moment, and then left just as quickly as he had arrived, his head down, his footsteps uneven. Miss Marple observed it all silently. Lucy, however, was already busy placing their order for scones. 15 minutes later, the grand raffle began. A modest crowd gathered around a temporary stage where the mall manager and Mr. Clive Dawson, a man with a cheerful disposition and a slightly ill-fitting Santa hat, welcomed everyone. Laughter floated into the air. Parents hoisted small children onto their shoulders to get a better view, and a massive golden raffle box was carried onto the stage with great ceremonial importance. Miss Marple stood at the very back of the crowd, only half listening to the announcements. Lucy nudged her playfully. "Drat, I didn't win anything." Shame. Suddenly, a scream tore through the festive hum. It was sharp, terrified, and it came from the direction of the lifts just behind the toy store. Within moments, the atmosphere shattered. The crowd parted instinctively. Security guards dashed forward, and murmurs spread like wildfire through the atrium. "A man has collapsed," someone whispered. He was sprawled just inside the open lift doors, half turned as though he had been trying desperately to exit. His coat was fallen open. That same brown leather satchel lay on the floor beside him. Someone cried out for a doctor. A woman nearby began to sob. Miss Marple's eyes widened just slightly. It was the same man. The one who had arrived at the cafe table too late. The one who had searched the crowd with such anxiety only moments before. Mr. Dawson, the manager, was on stage calling for calm over the microphone. The security team tried to usher people back, but the festive illusion had cracked completely. In the distance, the thin wail of police sirens began to slice through the jaunty Christmas music still playing overhead. Miss Marple's voice was almost inaudible as she leaned in to her niece. "I think, Lucy dear, our shopping trip has taken a rather serious turn." Lucidia, looking pale, said nothing. The crowd around them assumed it was a tragic heart attack, or perhaps a faint brought on by the heat and the crush. But Miss Marple had already noted two very specific things that suggested otherwise. First, there was a faint trace of pink foam around the man's lips. And second, she spotted the shattered edge of a porcelain teacup peeking out from the top of his open satchel. It was a porcelain teacup bearing the exact same pattern as the one served at the cafe they had just passed. And in Miss Marple's long experience, pink foam never accompanied natural causes. This was no accident. It was murder, and someone had just killed boldly, publicly, and very deliberately in the most cheerful place in Milchester. Inspector Colin Graves arrived at Harrington Arcade precisely 38 minutes after the emergency call was placed. He was a tall man, clean-shaven, wearing a dark overcoat buttoned right up against the winter chill. Although his collar had gone slightly, a small sign that his morning had already been hurried and his patience tested. By the time he entered through the main glass doors, the relentless Christmas music had finally been turned off. The crowd had mostly dispersed, leaving behind frightened whispers and the occasional shaky breath from lingering witnesses. The area around the lift had been taped off. Mall staff stood in small, nervous clusters, whispering behind their hands. The body had been covered with a grey tarpaulin. Miss Marple stood nearby, quiet, unnoticed by most, but watchful as ever. Inspector Graves approached the security guard standing by the body, his notebook already open. "Name?" he asked briskly. "Christopher Haynes," replied the security officer, looking shaken. "He's a manager at Bray and Plot Financial Consultancy. Their offices are up on the second floor." "That satchel over there was his." Graves crouched down beside the body. He peeled back the tarpaulin slightly, taking a quick, professional look, and frowned. Pink foam at the lips. No visible signs of trauma or injury. The body was still warm. He stood up. "Where is this cafe he came from?" The officer pointed. "Right around the corner, sir. Brew and bow." Graves nodded grimly. "Right. Tell your team to hold off on removing anything from the scene just yet. I want statements from all the cafe staff and anyone who was seated nearby in the last hour. Nobody leaves this area without talking to us first." At that, Miss Marple stepped forward, with a hintly polite clearing of her throat. "Excuse me, Inspector. Jane Marple, I happened to witness Mr. Haynes's final moments." Graves looked at her. It was polite, perhaps even mildly amused by the interruption from this little old lady. "Did you now?" "Oh, yes," she said with a faint, disarming smile. "Though I expect I noticed a few things others may have missed. Older women are often overlooked. You see, it is a distinct blessing in matters such as these." Graves raised an eyebrow but gestured for her to continue. "Primera, sa, W." Mr. Haynes approached the cafe area. She began steadily. He seemed surprised, perhaps even alarmed. that someone had already left a specific table, a woman. She was wearing a pale red coat. Elegant, though clearly very unsettled. She departed just moments before he arrived at the table. Did he speak to anyone? Graves asked, his pen hovering over his notebook. No, not directly. He reached into his own coat, appeared to search for something, and then he sat down for just a moment. Then he stood up quite suddenly and hurried towards the lift. Did he seem ill at that point? Miss Marple shook her head gently. Not until he actually reached the lift doors. Then he faltered. It was quite sudden, almost rehearsed in a strange sort of way, as if something had been timed to happen right then. Graves paused, looking at her sharply. Timed? What do you mean? Might be wrong. Of course, she added humbly, but he clutched at his side, as though something had struck him internally with great force. It was not the kind of gesture one makes during a panic attack or an ordinary fainting spell. And then, of course, there was the foam. Gravis novet. Slowly. Poison, perhaps? Quite possibly. Did you get a good look at the woman in red? He asked. Mid-30s, I should think. Dark auburn hair, pinned back neatly, a pale red wool coat, and leather gloves. She sat alone at that table for at least 10 minutes, glancing frequently at the time. Graves scribbled this down rapidly. You have a remarkably sharp eye, Miss Marple. I only watch, Inspector, she replied softly. People are always telling you who they are. If only you give them the chance to show you. At that moment, a young police constable arrived at the scene, looking slightly out of breath. Inspector? The constable panted. We've pulled the CCTV footage from the mall security. It shows Haynes entering from the car park level at 10:03 a.m. He walks straight to the Brew and Beau Cafe. He looks around for someone, sits briefly, then heads to the lift. He collapses at exactly 10:27 a.m. And the woman? Graves asked. The woman in the red coat appears on camera at 10:15 a.m. She leaves at 10:25 a.m. just seconds before Haynes arrives at the table. Excellent, Graves said. Get me a still image from that footage and circulate it immediately. She is priority number 1. He turned back to Miss Marple. Did you know the victim, Mr. Haynes? No, she replied, though I dare say my niece, Lucy, might know someone who does. This is her local haunt, after all. Graves looked around, still taking in the excessive festive decorations of the mall surrounding the crime scene. Seems an odd place for a murder, doesn't it? Miss Marple smiled faintly. Oh, Inspector. Murder never chooses the setting. It merely adapts to wherever it finds itself. Later that afternoon, the police quietly informed the press that a man had died suddenly at Harrington Arcade, pending further investigation. There was no mention of poison. Not yet. Not yet. Back at her small, cozy bungalow, Lucy sat beside Miss Marple on a floral sofa, half-heartedly sipping a cup of tea. The shock was still evident on her face. I just don't understand it, Lucy said for the 4th time. That poor man, and right at Christmas, too. Miss Marple stirred her own tea thoughtfully, without drinking. People are rarely killed out of season. Dear, I am far more curious about why it happened there. Why choose such a public setting? Poisoning is usually such an intimate, personal crime. It requires a level of premeditation that most murders do not. Lucy shook her head. I've never even heard of Christopher Haynes before today. No, Miss Marple agreed, but perhaps others have. She reached into her large knitting bag and produced a small, worn notebook. Do you recall the woman who owned the toy shop, Mrs. Keene? Yes, of course. Like I said, she's terribly involved in all the local community events. I saw her speaking with a man just before the raffle began. They looked like adversaries who had been forced into polite conversation. It made me wonder if perhaps Mr. Haynes was more connected to the people in that mall than we realize. Lucy hesitated, setting her cup down with a clatter. You know, there is something else. Miss Marple looked up sharply. Yes. Well, I know it sounds silly, but a friend of mine works in the mall's main administration office. She mentioned something odd happened just last week. Someone left an anonymous complaint about one of the businesses in the mall. It alleged serious financial irregularities. It was handed straight to the mall manager, Mr. Dawson, but nobody knows who wrote it. Miss Marple's expression turned very thoughtful indeed. Do you suppose that might be linked to Mr. Haynes? I don't know, Lucy said. It just seems like odd timing. Yes, Miss Marple said softly, but murders are rarely without motive, dear, and motives tend to arrive long before the act itself, not after. She stood up slowly, slipping her arms into her wool coat. Where are you going? Lucy asked, startled. To take a short walk, Miss Marple replied with a twinkle in her eye. Perhaps the toy shop is still open. A little conversation with Mrs. Keene might be very enlightening right about now. At Wonder World Toys, the little silver bells above the door chimed cheerfully as Miss Marple entered. The shop was still a flurry of last-minute panic buyers and overexcited children grabbing at plush reindeer. But behind the main counter, Mrs. Judith Keene remained perfectly composed until she saw Miss Marple approaching. Her professional smile tightened instantly into the kind of smile used to fend off unwanted inquiries. Good afternoon, Miss Marple began, her voice sweet and gentle. You may not remember me, my dear, but we were both present in the atrium during the raffle earlier today. Mrs. Keene's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Yes, of course, a terrible business, wasn't it? Absolutely dreadful. Quite, Miss Marple agreed. I only wondered, did you happen to know the poor man who collapsed? Mrs. Keene hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. No, not really. I may have seen him passing by the shop window occasionally. He wasn't from around here, was he? I believe he worked upstairs, in the offices. Oh, Mrs. Keene's voice lifted slightly, too high for casual interest. I didn't realize. Miss Marple smiled gently. You seemed rather tense earlier when you were speaking to that tall gentleman in the blue coat just before the raffle started. Mrs. Keene's expression stiffened into a mask. That was my ex-husband. I assure you, if I seemed tense, it was entirely a personal matter. It had absolutely nothing to do with today's tragedy. Of course, Miss Marple said soothingly. Thank you for your time. She turned to leave, but not before noting the precise way Mrs. Keene's hand had trembled thus. She sets down a tin toy soldier on the glass counter. Miss Marple didn't need any further confirmation. Someone in this mall had killed a man, and Mrs. Judith Keene was definitely hiding something. By the following morning, the bright winter sky had dulled to a bleak, heavy gray, and a thin crust of fresh snow crunched underfoot in Milchester's side streets. The Harrington Arcade reopened quietly. There were no festive announcements over the tannoy today. No cheerful music piped through the speakers. The children's train sat perfectly still and silent beneath the towering Christmas tree. A discreet sign placed near the lifts reads simply, "Temporarily out of service." Inside Brew and Bow, the cafe where Christopher Haynes had spent his final conscious moments, Inspector Graves sat across a small table from Miss Marple. His expression was professionally neutral, though his pen was tapping a rhythmic, impatient tattoo against the rim of his notebook. "So," Graves began, keeping his voice low, "we've confirmed the preliminary cause of death. It was digitoxin poisoning, plant bass, most likely administered in a strong drink to mask the taste." Miss Marple nodded sadly. "Foxglove, found in many cottage gardens, I believe. It is lethal in sufficient doses, but terribly bitter, not if masked with enough sugar and strong coffee." Graves replied grimly, "We spoke with the barista on duty yesterday. She swears she didn't serve Haynes anything personally. She says that corner table had been wiped down right after the woman in the red coat left it. There were no used cups on it when he arrived, and no cup was found on the body either." Miss Marple murmured thoughtfully, "Except for a fragment, I noticed a piece of porcelain in his open satchel." "Right, we found that too. It matched the cafe's teacup design perfectly. Someone wanted us to believe he had taken his drink to go, perhaps poured it into a travel mug, but he hadn't," Miss Marple said. "He arrived too late for that. His drink must have been waiting for him." Graves leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "Go on." "The woman in the red coat," Miss Marple explained. "She arrived early. She sat alone. She ordered something. Then she left, just seconds before Mr. Haynes arrived. But what if she had intended to meet him? What if they had arranged this meeting quietly and she had ordered his drink for him, leaving it ready at the table? Then he arrived, sat down, drank it quickly, never realizing it was poisoned." "Indeed." Graves nodded slowly, following her logic. "So, this woman in red was either an unwitting accomplice who ordered the drink, or she is the killer herself." Miss Marple said nothing for a moment, staring into her own teacup. Then she added softly, "Unless someone else placed the drink there, pretending it was from her." Graves tapped his pen again, faster this time. "We're reviewing the full camera feed from the cafe area now, but the angles are poor. There was too much foot traffic with the Christmas rush." "What about the raffle box?" Miss Marple asked suddenly. "The large golden one on the stage?" "Yes, it was near the center of the atrium. It was easily visible from most of the cafe tables," she pointed out. Graves frowned, trying to see the connection. "You think someone used the raffle draw as cover for their actions?" "I think," Miss Marple said gently, "that the killer needed Mr. Haynes to be in a very specific place, at a very specific time. A public poisoning requires absolute precision. Meanwhile, Lucy Westmott ever eager to be helpful to her aunt, had taken it upon herself to investigate in her own way. She wandered through the mall, speaking casually to staff in various shops, perfectly playing the role of the slightly gossipy, concerned niece of the lovely old woman with the hat who had chanté. Body moss. People opened up to her quickly. At the florist's kiosk, Lucy learned that Christopher Haynes had once been seen having a blazing argument with another man just outside the financial offices upstairs. "Tall chap," the florist said, snipping away at some holly branches. "Grey hair, bit of a temper on him. They went at it like cats in a sack last week." Didn't catch the name, though. At the optician's, a more reluctant shop assistant recalled Haynes, visiting occasionally to have his glasses adjusted. "He was always polite," she said, "but very distracted, like he was constantly watching something over your shoulder." Lucy pressed for more details, but the girl clammed up, fearing she had said too much. That evening, Lucy returned to the bungalow, her cheeks flushed red from the cold outside and a distinct nervous edge to her voice. "Aunt Jane," she began, unwrapping. Scarf. "Do you know anything about a man named Francis Doran?" Miss Marple looked up from her armchair, where she had been knitting. "The name rings a faint bell." "Why do you ask?" "I think he's the one who argued with Christopher Haynes. Apparently, Doran used to be a partner at Bray & Pla, the financial firm, but he left under a cloud. A while ago, a few people I spoke to hinted there was a major financial dispute between them. Doran runs a small antiques shop now, just off the high street." "Interesting," Miss Marple murmured, her needles clicking softly. "Do you happen to know what time of day this argument took place?" "Last Tuesday, apparently. Around closing time." Miss Marple stopped knitting. She rose, folded her work carefully, and moved over to the small rosewood writing desk near the window. From her handbag, she retrieved a folded scrap of hand-drawn map of the mall's layout she had made, the toy shop, the cafe, the escalator, and the lift. She traced with her finger, all within easy view of each other. "But the financial offices are tucked away upstairs. Lucy watched her aunt scribble a few quick notes in her book, then asked, "Do you think this Francis Doran could have done it?" "Possibly," Miss Marple replied without looking up, "but motivation and opportunity rarely travel alone, my dear." Wonder more about the reason for the meeting itself, Lucy said. If Haynes was meant to meet someone in secret and knew it was dangerous enough to be arguing about, why risk doing it there in such a public place? You think he was going to expose something? Miss Marple asked. Or someone? Miss Marple's eyes narrowed slightly. Indeed, the next morning, Miss Marple decided to pay a visit to Francis Doran's antiques shop. It was a cramped, cluttered little space, smelling faintly of dust and beeswax. It was packed floor to ceiling with dark wooden furniture, faded Persian rugs, and shelves stuffed with mismatched oddities. Doran himself emerged from behind a heavy velvet curtain at the back of the shop, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. He was a tall man with thinning gray hair and a suspicious air about him. "Help you, madam?" he asked gruffly. Miss Marple tilted her head. adopting an air of slight confusion. "I was wondering if you might assist me in finding a Christmas gift for my niece. Something unique, perhaps." Doran's eyes scanned her face intently. "You look familiar," he said bluntly. "Were you at the shopping mall the other day? During that raffle business?" His eyes flickered away from hers. "I don't get out to the arcade much," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Ah, my mistake then," Miss Marple said sweetly. "But you did know Mr. Haynes, I assume? The poor man who died." There was a heavy pause in the dusty shop. Francis Doran just lied to Miss Marple's face. He claims he wasn't at the mall, but his eyes say otherwise. Is he the killer, or is the woman in the red coat still the main suspect? The clues are all there, but the truth is twisted. The investigation continues immediately in part 2. Click the video on your screen right now to find out who really poisoned Christopher Haynes before they strike again. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your night. May you find deep peace and restful sleep. Wishing you the sweetest dreams. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.